Welcome to the Minds Capital Podcast, your connection to the growing world of independent sponsors and entrepreneurial private equity. We are your hosts, Will Smith and Nicholas James. Welcome, everyone, to the Minds Capital Podcast, episode 35. And we are upstairs at the McGuireWoods Conference, which is the mecca of independent sponsorship. My first time here. I'll share first-timer observations here in a few minutes. But we literally came up with a glass or of wine or a beer in each of us to share our observations from the first and busiest day of the conference. So our episode this week is just our kind of live from McGuireWoods take on how this is going here in Dallas. Nicholas, how was your day?
Yep. So we are 3 out of almost 2,000 attendees at this conference. And it's been, as you would expect, a very energizing day and also quite a draining day. The first day, which is the one we're finalizing here now, it's about 6 o'clock. It's a day full of speed dating sessions. So they schedule you up with these one-on-one sessions, 20 minutes each, back to back the whole day, where capital providers meet independent sponsors, and you're paired up in that way. So met a lot of great new people today, learned about a few new deals, sourced a few new podcast guests, and have just really had a blast throughout the day.
Seen a bunch of our podcast guests and heard from them that they've been hearing from other people at the conference about their appearance on the podcast, which is always fun.
Yeah.
I think Max even ended up in a meeting where you were the wrong Max. Is that right?
Somebody must have recognized me, I guess, maybe from the podcast, but thought I was somebody else, but recognized me, proceeded to sit me down in a chair near the restaurant and pitch me a deal, and then said, "Hey, wait a second, you're not the Max I was looking for." I said, I guess not. And he said, do you know who I am? And I said, I'm sorry, but I don't. I'd love to hear about your deal anyway.
Was it a good deal?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. So we'll see if we get a little bit more information on it. But,
wonderful.
It was cool to be, the podcast certainly has had a pretty good reach so far.
Yeah.
And, it's easy to explain Minds Capital to somebody when they've kind of heard us talk on the podcast and heard us talk about the fund and talk about sponsors. So it was just interesting. That aspect of it was new for me. I don't typically get very recognized on my on most days, but it was cool.
The power of content is real. So why don't I share some first time observations of this conference? So this is a monster of a conference. It's really impressive and overwhelming. You walk in. So one of the things that everyone talks about is how much it's grown and how quickly. So just a few years ago, it was 200 and 300 people at the McGuireWoods office building, apparently. And then they moved to the Ritz, I guess. And now it's at the Fairmont in downtown Dallas. And it basically takes over all of the first floor in their giant ballroom, basically, and side rooms. And then all of the second floor, all the conference rooms on the second floor. And I think I didn't make it to the third floor today, but it's on the floor plan. So it may also bleed into the third floor. And it is just packed with people dressed like we're dressed right now. It is really a lot of people. I kept hearing that it was like 1,000 to 1,200 people. I guess those are outdated numbers because apparently there are almost 2,000 people here today. And so, it's really, like you said, Nicholas, it's both energizing, but also it's a lot. It's pretty overwhelming. And this speed dating thing or this speed networking format, which is not unique to McGuireWoods, any independent sponsor conference that I've been to has this, where in advance you book short 20-minute meetings back to back to back. If you're a sponsor looking for capital, you book with capital providers and vice versa. So it really is, to the credit of this format, really is about facilitating deals that actually happen here. And so you do step back and you're like, the amount of capital that's flowing through these 2 days is also impressive. But anyway, the speed networking thing, if you've booked ahead of time, I had 10, 20-minute meetings back to back to back to back to back. Very efficient, a great structure, but also everyone acknowledges deplete. I mean, it takes a lot of energy to do speed dating, as real speeding takes a lot of energy for anybody who's been unfortunate enough to try that. How are your meetings, by the way?
No, I thought the meetings were excellent. I mean, my meetings ranged from a few first-time sponsors that I thought had tons of potential, and in those cases, they both had very good plans and very good partners, and they were very focused on very specific niches. Yeah. And so they were not coming here as generalists. At least the two new sponsors that I met with, they had a very specific background, and their partners were very involved. One was heavily into government-related businesses and had an outstanding background in that, and was very well connected. And the other one had a very much of an AI background with a large corporation in terms of automating processes and streamlining, a large business in order to streamline the back office and implement AI. And I mean, what business does not need that right now? I think that's an exciting vantage point to be coming into independent sponsorship. I think somebody like that could certainly benefit potentially from finding more of an M&A focused independent sponsor partner, which we actually discussed in our meeting. And I think, the partnership trend among independent sponsors is certainly up for many reasons. But my meetings were great. I also met with some very seasoned sponsors. I met with some of our sponsors that we've invested in and met them for the first time in person. Yeah. And a couple of them were much taller than I expected. I felt very small, at least in terms of height today, but that's all right. But I will say McGuireWoods did a fantastic job. I mean, this is not an easy thing to coordinate. Yeah. There was so much caffeine. I mean, if you wanted a espresso, if you wanted an American style coffee, at every corner there was a coffee station. Yes. There were snacks.
Yes. Good observation. Yes.
I mean, it was loud. I mean, there are 2,000 predominantly men speaking very loudly in these rooms. I almost lost my voice by the third meeting. Fortunately, the snacks and the refreshments helped me gain that back. I actually had a meeting where Nicholas was able to join me and did a little more than half the talking, so I rested my voice, was ready for the next meeting. Funny enough, I had one one meeting where the sponsor ghosted me, and I was a little sad. And then I looked to my left, and Daniel Kazam was there. And I saw Daniel too. His meeting, capital provider, had ghosted him. Oh, perfect. So we had an awesome meeting, just the two of us. So just amazing who you'll run into. It was super fun. It is energizing. I mean, you think about the competitiveness of being a sponsor nowadays. I mean, that's maybe a little overwhelming for some of these first-time sponsors. There's a lot of folks here, but at the same time, I found it to be very collaborative. And I felt like, the sponsors were talking amongst each other. They're here to meet capital providers, right? Yeah. For the most part. But it's interesting how much a new sponsor can benefit from just speaking to some of the more experienced sponsors here.
Which they don't do, and we were talking about, is it's all about pairing sponsors with capital. And I happened to be on the escalator and talking to the guy next to me who was a capital provider, and we actually had a lot to talk about. And I was like, I realized, I was like, this actually doesn't provide a way for me to meet fellow capital providers here. And similarly with sponsors, they don't really have a way to meet each other. So take the liberty of making a recommendation to McGuireWoods. It'd be cool for those on the same side of the table to be able to network and meet. I think there could be benefit there as well.
Yeah, I think you're certainly doing that sort of in between the meetings. Yeah. But I think, the focus is obviously deal making, but there's so much to be gained from sponsors meeting other sponsors, capital providers meeting other capital providers. I mean, there's synergies amongst capital providers as well. You mentioned Nicholas. I mean, there can be shared deal flow. There can be mentoring opportunities. You all have interviewed some sponsors who have, independent sponsor sort of incubator models. So you can't talk to everybody here, unfortunately. I mean, you could literally meet for 3 weeks straight with folks here and probably learn something new every day.
Wow, can you even imagine?
I don't know if I can handle that, though. 3 days or 3 days will be good.
I'll say I've been to this conference for many years as a sponsor. And I think my first year was 2019, and I've been every year since. it's a lot more fun to come as a capital provider. First of all, we get to wear this orange lanyard as opposed to the blue one. And it means when you open that MeetMax portal, you actually get inbounds invites. People want to talk to you, not the other way around. So that's a lot of fun. People, of course, want capital. But I will say the other big change this year for me is normally when I have a break in between meetings, I would, be relieved and let me walk out, grab a muffin and some coffee and relax for half an hour. But with the podcast in particular, walking out in the foyer was like, really exposing myself there. If I needed peace, I needed to find a corner to hide in. So that was just really fun. Met so many great people, lots of compliments from people who come up and say they've appreciate our content. So that's really gratifying. So thank you to everyone who are out there listening, and great to meet you today in the elevator or escalator or by the coffee machine.
Being a podcaster on video and 6'9" is a bad combination to hide. There's no way.
I'm guilty as charged. Yeah. Yes, people can spot me easily in big crowds.
So on this point about competition, one of the things that I was thinking about, Nicholas, is in our interviews, you often ask the guest or make the point of like, how do you differentiate as a sponsor?
Yes.
And I always, coming from my search and ETA orientation, where that's less asked or less thought about, even though searchers also complain that getting deals is competitive and difficult. Being here today, I understand viscerally now, because if you're a sponsor, you come to this and you see 1,900 other people who are all looking for, single digit millions of EBITDA and recurring businesses and, all the check boxes. Obviously, there are also a lot of sponsors that have a niche and a thesis and are more something more specific than that. But there are still many hundreds of people who are looking for the same thing. And you just get the sense of how challenging and increasingly challenging it is for a sponsor out there. And to your point, the importance of differentiating somehow on something.
Yeah, two thoughts on that. First of all, I think that was actually the idea behind this very podcast. Interviewing people who are very good at articulating their edge or their methodology or their thesis. And it's been super educational. And we've had the privilege of meeting some of the best via the podcast who are out there doing great things. The other thing, we have, of course, interviewed 3 or 4 internationally based independent sponsors. And I think that's where you see a big contrast, because they are able to a larger extent pull it off by being a generalist, which the market in the US is just simply too mature for that now. Sure, anyone can bump into a deal and luck into a deal. You're probably not going to do it, your first month of searching, but it can happen. But if you want to build a durable, scalable investment shop that does a deal per year, you need to have an edge. You need to have processes. You need to be professional about it.
Yeah. I felt that I just wondered for some of these independent sponsors if, again, because I have this kind of anchoring to search and ETA, if a way in is just to lower the threshold on size of business that they're willing to buy, and buy a much smaller business than, rather than targeting 3 to 7 of EBITDA, you target 1 million of EBITDA, and just accept that you're basically going to be the operator of that business for a couple of years, but that's your way in. And then you obviously hopefully grow that business. And if you come out the other side of that with a business that's 1.5 million of EBITDA, but you also have 2-3 years of hardcore operational experience, I would think that at that point you're really well positioned for differentiation, because now you can reach out to every owner in the industry, and you'll at least get a call back.
Yes.
But then also with capital providers, they see that you've really developed chops in that industry as owner of a business. It's a very different strategy, because many independent sponsors are. The whole strategy is about not being operationally day-to-day involved. But as it gets more and more competitive, maybe this is something that has to happen for some sponsors.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think the generalist approach, I agree, Nicholas, you can do a good deal. I think any good sponsor, it's got a good pedigree that
Right.
maybe has a little luck to find, the good deal at a good valuation. I think you can do a generalist deal. I don't think you can as easily make a career out of being a generalist independent sponsor these days. I think, like you said, the industry is just too mature. There's too much competition. There's a lot of partnered searches where the partners have very complementary skill sets, which gives them an edge. One partner is highly focused on M&A. The other partner might be highly focused on, operations of a very specific business. It may have a very deep resume in that business. And on day one, they bring connections. They bring, they can turn on sales mechanisms and relationships sort of immediately from their past life and bring that to the equation. That's going to be very hard to compete against if you're more of a generalist, good, MBA operating experience, but you just don't have that deep niche industry experience. That's going to be tough nowadays, I feel like, in the US market.
And it's not just about finding a deal, it's also about persuading capital providers. And one of the things we value the most as a capital provider with Minds Capital is a strong sponsor target fit. So if you're a generalist lacking experience in the particular vertical you're going after, it's just simply not as compelling of a pitch as someone who's, hey, I've been doing deals in this space for 15 years.
Yeah.
Well, and hence going back to, I keep harping on this partnership approach, and it's not the right approach for everyone, for sure. But if you are more of that M&A sort of private equity, a little bit more generalist deal maker, maybe a thought is to find that niche, very plugged in operator.
Yeah.
Maybe you're hunting for that type of a person along the way to partner with, to give your combined effort that edge that you need to be successful.
Well, actually, and now that you mention it, I feel like there is a pattern that I saw people talk about today, but we've seen before, where a sponsor will, and it may arguably be your format, Nicholas, and your deal, correct me, where you partner with the owner of the business, and so you're moving forward with that owner, and they're the ones bringing and so they're not only rolling, but they're going to continue to basically be CEO or president of that business. But it's really much more of a partnership and a collaboration, and they're the ones bringing all that operational know-how. They're looking for they don't have any transaction experience. They don't know how to do M&A, but they know that there's value to be unlocked there. So obviously that's the value you're bringing, and then the value they're bringing is the CEO.
As a sponsor, there is a real value creation in that partnership between a sponsor who has the white collar skills, if you will, and the seller who may roll and stay involved and brings the operational know-how. That's real. I will say, as an investor, I'm looking for an extra factor on top of that will augment the business and take it to the next level, right? Someone who has built the business that we're trying to build in 5 years. And they can come in at the board level. They can be an operating partners. There are different ways to structure this. To your point, Max, about partners, yes, we hear more about that. There are people who are seeking partners who are out there solo right now. I think, in general, sponsors present better when there are two of them. Not necessarily 2 times better, but sometimes 1 + 1 equals more than 2. And it makes sense. It's just a more robust team, and they also have a broader skill set. And when you're looking for a partner, I often tell people, instead of going with your college roommate who also went into banking and then also went into middle market private equity and who also lives in New York and happens to be the same age as you, find someone who's quite different, because it's all about narrative. And so if you can have a partner of a different age or with a totally different skill set that can really add something different to the value proposition, I think there's value there for both the seller, the bankers and intermediaries, and for us as investors.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more with that. And when you talk to these sponsors and all of a sudden they present that X factor, this person's on the board,
right?
And he or she's coming from here,
yes.
And we believe that he can make a phone call or he could bring his old sales staff, some of the old sales staff with him.
Yes,
there are these X factors that just put these deals potentially. They set them up for exponential growth, as opposed to more formulaic, streamlined growth, but
Yeah.
it's that X factor. It's the 1 + 1 = 3 all of a sudden.
Didn't we have a deal recently we committed to where you were on the fence,
Yes.
but then there was the board composition?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
What was the situation?
It's a distribution business.
Yeah.
And the sponsor, as it turns out, we also had a long discussion about investment bankers that become independent sponsors,
Right.
which for some reason, even though I've invested in a few of those that actually have gone pretty well with somebody who was a guest on this podcast, who was a banker, is a banker. My position was, can a banker really be a good operator? Because he was kind of in this deal, he was going to be pretty involved in operations because it was an older seller. They were rolling equity, but they were not going to be around. We were not going to be around forever in the business. What got me over the fence was it was 1 or 2 board members who come from like a national 10, 20 times the size distribution company, not necessarily a competitor, but an adjacent, very large, geographically different business. And those folks, or that person is on the board on this deal. Well, that's pretty powerful.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, he's bought in. He's in the industry, works or has run a company that is potentially 10 or 20 times larger, believes so much in the sponsor, believes so much in this deal that he's willing to invest his time in it and bring his connections. That's the 1 + 1 = 3 situation that I think, even if you were the more generalist sponsor that brings, like you said, the sort of the white collared deal M&A experience, it's how do you position yourself with either a partner or a really strong advisory board going into the deal that differentiates you and then unlocks some potential synergies that just would not happen so quickly without these key people being involved.
I talked to a couple sponsors today who kind of recognized that they or just felt that they would really like a sponsor to a partner to go find a business to buy with, and they were just like, where do I start? So I all of this makes sense, I think, in the abstract, but I think it's hard enough to just go find a partner that you trust, respect, et cetera, just kind of on character issues, let alone also has all of this kind of these hard skills that you're looking for. Probably part of the reason, Nicholas, your point about the, 2 guys who basically look the same, come from the same background, et cetera. Part of the reason that happens is just because people tend to partner with people they trust and already know. So I'm not defending that, but it's more of just a kind of an observational rhetorical question. How does a sponsor who sees their own gaps, would like to have a partner, find said partner?
Question for you, Will. Contrasting this conference to the many ETA conferences you go to, how will you rate them or contrast them in terms of entrepreneurialism?
Wow. Really good question.
Nobody ever asks you questions on these podcasts, right?
Well, I guess what you're really asking is from ETA and search versus independent sponsorship broadly. I mean, the conferences are basically just a cross section of people in those. There's definitely in independent sponsor land. There's definitely more of a finance orientation. So I think there are a lot of independent sponsors who would self-define as investors, and those they're maybe entrepreneurial investors. Whereas I think on the ETA side, searcher side, they all see themselves as owners or entrepreneurs. So I think that they're probably, as a percentage, as a ratio, almost all searchers see you as what they're doing. And I would agree as entrepreneurial. And I think in some sponsors, especially as you get to be a much more mature sponsor, bigger sponsor shops, they're more investors than they are entrepreneurs. On the other hand, there's kind of 2 layers to the question with independent sponsors. The deal you buy is like a first-time independent sponsor. Are you an entrepreneur in that deal, or are you an entrepreneur building an investment firm? It's kind of, it gets a little meta, but it's kind of like what we're doing right with Minds Capital. We're investors, but we're entrepreneurs building an investment firm. So it's a it's a subtle nuance. But I would say that you hear and see the word investor, investment a lot more in this crowd than you do in the search crowd, where they much more self-identify as entrepreneurs, as owners, as operators. So that would be my answer to that. Yeah. But I will just say the other kind of, it is interesting in a lot of ways to contrast this with the ETA conferences I've been to. I haven't been to the biggest ETA conference of all, which is Harvard's, HBS's. And I think Northwestern in booths is also big. It might be the second biggest. I also haven't been to that one, not for any particular reason. But the ones that I've been to MIT's. They range from small, 200 people, to MIT's, and CETA at UVA was probably 400 or 500. So you don't walk into those and feel overwhelmed. You don't walk into those and feel like, boy, there's a lot of people out there competing with me for deals, like you do here. So this is a different. It's a different experience.
I mean, when my elevator opened this morning, coming down from the room we're recording this from, I just wanted to take it right back up again. It was just so crowded.
Yeah.
You know?
Introverts, be aware.
No, you gotta be. You gotta bring your A game. You gotta get a decent night's sleep before. I mean, you gotta listen. You got to put one foot in front of the other if you're coming to something like this. And this is not for everybody. I mean, listen, do I love going into a room of 2,000 people and shaking hands? And no, it's a little terrifying, to be honest with you. Yeah. But you got to do it. And, if we can get through, or anybody can get through a couple days of this, you just got to try to not lose your voice. But, there's so many interesting people here, and there's so much to learn. And there's a lot, if you're a capital provider, there's a lot of deal flow here. Oh, yeah. If you're an independent sponsor, there's a lot of capital here.
How was your deal flow today?
It was actually pretty good. I think there was about 5 or so live deals out of 10 meetings.
So these are sponsors that you met with who have a live LOI when you talk to them.
They do, yeah. Yes. And there was at least one that had 2 deals under LOI right now.
Okay.
So yeah, there was, I'd say about half the folks I met with had a deal under LOI. And then a few mentioned live deals that were, almost under LOI or might be under LOI soon. I did get a little bit of a sense, and, we look at GF data, and it'll be interesting because we're going to get Q3 data here soon in terms of deal metrics and deal flow. You do get the sense that this year, deal flow has been, continued to be a little soft, and the GF data suggested that deal flow may be even a little softer this year than last year. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see. I'd say anecdotally from the accounting firm, it does seem like the back half of this year it's not dead by any sense, but it's not as crazy as it was, I think, last year.
Oh, you're seeing that at LCS too?
A little bit. I mean, it certainly has picked up. September was really dead. October has picked way up, but it's, is it the frenzy that it's been in last year and I don't know. So it'll be interesting to see the metrics, but you get the sense that it is a lot of folks chasing not that many deals right now.
And this is high season for deals.
I mean, in my experience, it is. GF data sort of suggests that in most years, it's not as seasonal as I've perceived it in the past, but that there is some pronounced, if even slight, some pronounced seasonality towards the end of the year.
Yeah.
So we should be in deal high season right now. There's certainly deals happening. I did hear quite a bit. My sample size is so small today, so it's so hard to draw a conclusion from this.
Although I was gonna ask on the small sample size about new sponsors. I guess new sponsors versus established sponsors, and then also sponsors under LOI. So that's 3 different. My meetings today, all great people. I enjoy them a lot, but I didn't come out with a single deal actually. And I think it's a little bit luck of the draw. Now, and just to go back to the format of the speed networking thing for anybody who hasn't been to one of these, as much as I like the format, like the week before the conference, when you have the long list of all the attendees, they have good tech to make these connections happen and schedule stuff and get it on your calendar and volunteer the time slot so you're not having to do it yourself. The tech does it for you. But it's hard to know who to meet with. So if you're capital, to Nicholas's earlier point, happily you get a lot of inbound, hey, I'd like to meet. But you can, especially if you're a bigger name in capital, you could you could just say, you could get filled up very quickly just by saying yes to everything. So the bigger, the more well-known you are as a capital provider, probably more of a family office you are, the more you probably have to be selective, and knowing who to say yes to and who not is probably a challenge.
Well, let me chime in on that one, actually. Somebody tipped me last year how to screen, as a capital provider, how to screen for who you should accept. And he said what he looks for is, first of all, he looks for a team. So he's looking for, an independent sponsor that is more than one person, not just because it means they're more mature and robust, but also because it just shows an organization with a little bit more ambition, perhaps. The second thing he said, they need a nice website. If they don't have that, they're not, it's just not good signaling. And then thirdly, he said a good portfolio. Or not a good portfolio, but that they have
a portfolio.
Deal at least one deal, track record of having closed deals before. Now, this would rule out all solo first-time new sponsors, of course. I'm not intending to say that, but that was his criteria. If I was going to add one from today myself, I would say there is something about the founder energy. So meeting the business development person, I enjoy it. They're pretty polished, but when I ask my famous question, what makes you different from everyone else in this room? The founders are the best, meaning the founders of the independent sponsor shop are always the best at answering that and really giving me that conviction as well that, this is someone we would like to work with.
I wonder, as a ratio, how many here are first-time sponsors who haven't done a deal? From my meetings today, it seemed like a lot, but I think that's random.
I think they have data on that, because I know when you screen, their tool for screening sponsors was pretty helpful on the Meet Max. But I believe there was a first-time sponsor criteria that you could filter for.
And there are filters, so it's not filters. So it may be that I wasn't using them as diligently.
I think for anybody that's coming in, using that Meet Max app for next year, I mean, the lesson for me is, definitely spend more time with it. And unfortunately, it's just going to take up probably a couple days at least, really, of going on websites, seeing who people are, checking LinkedIn. There's a description on the Meet Max app, and there's some good information there. But everybody, it's just human nature to kind of pump yourself up on a something like a little Meet Max app where you're trying to attract capital. But your website kind of speaks for itself, your portfolio speaks for itself, your LinkedIn, where'd you come from? I as much as I would like to meet sponsors who've already done deals that are probably going to do more deals. Obviously, we want to meet them. We obviously also do invest in first-time sponsors. And with a bit of digging on the LinkedIn, you can get a feel for whether or not the person is sort of niche-y enough for to be successful in this environment. Where are they coming from? What's their background? Where they go to school? What have they done? Sort of age range. Do they have enough maturity and experience to really do this? So I think as much as you're willing to put into it, you can probably get a decent amount out, but certainly some of it's going to be luck of the draw as well.
It helps when there is a little message alongside the invite. When they're like, hey, I'm so-and-so and I do so-and-so and I have an active deal under LOI. In particular, if they highlight that, I'm more likely to say yes. Okay, I would like to talk to you. You have a live deal.
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah. Any sponsor coming here with a live deal should say so loudly. And to be, despite all the focus that we're giving to the speed dating, speed networking, it actually isn't all that. There's definitely the chance meetings at the many coffee stands and at lunch. And so I mean, I've had countless conversations that were not in the speed networking thing, and now we're going to go to a dinner, and then we're going to be at the bar later that we've invited a lot of people to. So hopefully we'll continue into the night here. And then tomorrow is more speed networking, but it's shorter. It's the second half of the day. And the first half of the day is panels, like a traditional conference panel. So I'm sure there will be a lot of opportunities for just the typical chance encounters of a conference.
As a sponsor, I made a big point out of always bringing a live deal. I was terrified of being uninteresting for capital providers, and the best way to at least resemble something interesting was to bring a case study. Even if it's not under LOI, I would print a one-pager of whatever target I was working on, and it gave me a case study. It also gives them something, it gives you an opportunity to present to the capital provider, and it gives them a sense of how you evaluate deals and think about deals and what your philosophy is. So I found that to be very useful. An observation I made today is I think there are a lot more, like if you look on a per sponsor basis at this conference compared to a few years ago, there are a lot more portfolio companies per sponsor and a lot fewer, I think, live deals per sponsor than there used to be 5 years ago.
What does that tell us?
Well, it doesn't necessarily mean the time here is unproductive for us chasing deals. It just means we're investing in the relationships. And that's fine. At the end of the day, that's what the game is about. Actually, on that, let me take a step back, because we're fundraising right now, and I'm talking to a lot of prospective investors. And so one of my big talking points when I chat with them, at least, is there are 2,000 sponsors out there, and our content and our approach has been to how can we generate inbounds? How can we use content to create inbound deal flow? It's working well. We're super happy about our results to date. But there is also the fact that out of the 2,000, we're starting to form relationships through investing in them and through being on the podcast and building relationships with these guys, where we will over time identify, here are the 100 that we know really well. And unlike searchers who will do one deal, right? Yeah. These guys are serial deal makers, so effectively repeat customers. So here are the 100 sponsors. We've vetted them. We've known them for a while now, and they send us one deal each on average per year. I see a future where Minds Capital, in addition to the inbounds, which will be icing on the cake, we will have this core engine of here are the 100 or 200 sponsors that we nurture relationships with, meet them here every year, and when we're looking to make a dozen commitments every year, this will be plenty. So that really excites me. The more entrenched you are here, the better your deal flow should get over time.
Oh, what a vision that is, boy. And I do feel like we're seeing the nascent kind of results of that. I mean, we've already invested in a couple of our sponsors with follow-on acquisitions.
On that, actually, and Thomas gave me the permission to use this one. Thomas Ince, he's famous in the Twitter world, and we didn't have a pre-existing relationship with him. They were recently ranked the #1 independent sponsor by Axial, and in August we got an inbound email from him, and it said something down the lines of, "Hey, we're about to close our next deal. We are fully subscribed, but we would like to build a relationship with you guys," because I think they knew you through Acquiring Minds, among other channels. And we ended up doing the deal. They carved out a little bit space for us to participate. And so for me, this is just a fantastic piece of evidence that being active in the space, trying to add value to the community is now giving us back not only deal flow in terms of volume, but also access, I hope, to good quality deals and some of the best sponsors out there, as evidenced by the ranking in this particular case. And Thomas will also be joining us on Thursday.
On the podcast? Oh, no, not yet, Thomas.
He's joining us for our annual Investor Day on Thursday this week, which we're hosting for our investors, and he's going to be in our upcoming fund. So that's super exciting. So in a very short amount of time, we've gotten to know him really well, and excited about what's ahead.
Yeah, I'm really excited to meet Thomas in person. I've only ever met him over Zoom. And so how is Investor Day coming together, Nicholas? Very excited.
Yeah, it's coming together very good. So in the morning, we're doing a site visit of a target, or not a target company, a portfolio company that we have called Quiltcraft. This is a Willistown Capital, is the independent sponsor, Bill Boffa and Darren Fultz. And so we're taking a tour down there. And then from 12 to 5, we have a series of speakers at a venue that we have where we're going to have our investors and these speakers and some of our portfolio sponsors as well present for the day, where we will have GF Data will be there, Citron Cooperman, McGuireWoods will be represented, and Axial in addition to us as well. talking to everyone. So looking forward to that as a networking, though I'm a little nervous after today and then tomorrow and then that's on Thursday that there's any energy remaining in this body, but you guys will have to carry the torch.
Eat well, sleep well, don't stay up too late, not too many beers.
Yeah.
That's the recipe. Lots of water.
Yeah.
And the thing I'm most worried about after today, well, I guess tomorrow will be a little easier. I really thought I was going to have no voice by the end of today.
And you're not the first person I heard say that. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of talking. It's
It
true.
was so loud. I mean, it's great, but it was loud, and I felt it start to go. And
Well, and I felt my hearing strained. I don't have the best hearing in the world, and I like my back got sore of kind of having to lean forward to hear people. It's true.
well, now the good news is we only have to now go talk through dinner and then talk through a happy hour until 8 o'clock tonight. So our voices should be just fine.
Yeah, exactly. Well, at least we'll have booze keeping us going.
Yes.
Here for the
But
next
not too
couple.
much, or
Not
else
too
we
much.
won't have
No,
energy
'cause I got
for
an early day tomorrow and a long day tomorrow as well. One other observation that I'll make, or actually, it's really what I've heard since I'm a capital provider. As we said earlier, I'm not actually communicating with many capital providers here, but what I have heard from a couple of sponsors is that if you want to access family office capital, this is really the leading, maybe the only real event where that happens. So family office capital is kind of notoriously cryptic was a word that I heard used today. There's a joke that if you've talked to one family office, you've talked to one family office. They're all very different and hard to access. But I actually had an interview with James Bohannon a couple weeks ago, who works at a family office and was kind of laying out what family office land looks like for searchers. This was on Acquiring Minds. And he, on the family office side, on the family office capital side, said what I'm hearing sponsors here today say, which is that this is the conference, and he's here today, I haven't seen him yet, but this is the conference that he goes to identify talent in independent sponsor land, to identify deals in independent sponsor land. So it's pretty interesting when you just hear about family offices, but when you really think about, well, how do I meet them and how do I access them and how difficult that can be? This really is apparently the place that it happens, the place to do it.
Max, I heard today somebody suggested that valuations are 1 to 1.5 times higher than before COVID. Mm-hmm. How does that resonate with your experience?
We'd have to look back at the data, and I think we looked at some of this recently. I mean, GF data, there's other databases, but GF data is certainly, probably the best for this, for the lower middle market. I think valuations have stayed from what we've seen, at the accounting firm and with GF data. Valuations have not gone down really across any of these size ranges up to sort of 100 million of enterprise value, all the way from 10 to 100. I think when we looked at it, at some of the highest levels, they actually did go down slightly towards sort of the upper end of that $100 million range. But, the sweet spot for these sponsors, I think is 15 to say $45 million of enterprise value. Mm-hmm. And when we look at that data, I don't know that it's really up or down since COVID. I think COVID drove valuations up. Are they up further since then? I don't think so. I think anecdotally though, you hear about these processes where, now funded PE comes down into the lower middle market and is looking for, some last minute multiple arbitrage on a portfolio that's about to exit. And they may, take one turn of arbitrage where it would make 0 sense for anybody else. Mm-hmm. So I have heard a lot of instances of PE bidding some of this stuff up to a point it just doesn't make sense. But on that note, so do I, are the valuations really up a turn and a half since COVID? Valuations have gone up. They did go up during COVID. I don't think they've gone down. I don't know exactly whether or not they're, that's the exact metric since COVID.
Well, the argument, sorry for interrupting you here, but was that turn of EBITDA is coming directly out of effectively the independent sponsor's pocket, because their carry is now a lot more diluted, right? Because instead of returning, 1.5 turns of equity, 1.5 turns of equity. They now have to return 2.5 to 3 turns of equity on any given deal that they're fundraising for.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, I think we need to look at the data again and really dive into that. I mean, I think we've got the data, fortunately, with GF data, where we can actually answer this
Nice
question.
plug.
But I would say, anecdotally as well, I heard again today another theme which keeps coming up and which supports the independent sponsor model from a sustainability standpoint is they are, independent sponsors do beat out higher valuations from private equity. Not every time, and probably not the majority of the time. But I heard another instance today in talking with a sponsor where he was not the highest bidder. He was just the best fit. And the seller was rolling 40% equity. And, that 40% that he's rolling, they're significant partners going forward.
Yeah.
And he was a better fit. He had a better vision for the business. And now he's got it under LOI. So, it's not going to happen every time the deal doesn't go to the highest bidder. But I think the flexibility and the sort of the entrepreneurial spirit of the independent sponsor model, that still can win out.
Yeah.
One thing that annoys me a little bit, actually, is how should I phrase this? I will say that the caliber of people, and I've been saying this all day, the caliber of people at this conference and in this ecosystem in general is sky high. I've been in VC, I've been in consulting, I've been, doing my MBA. I've been in many crowds with strong people, but this particular crowd, they have a track record. They know what they're up to in terms of the M&A game. They're good people, right? Because they have to be salesy with investors and business owners. And so just like all around, super high caliber is attracted to this industry. And I think in VC, you have very young founders, a much broader spectrum probably. You'll probably have more brilliance there, to be honest. But here, the average caliber, super high as I've seen in any space. That said, and this is what annoys me, I don't necessarily see a ton of innovation. So we talk about entrepreneurship, but to me, the independent sponsor model today is very formulaic. And when we break down all the hundreds of deals that we look at on a yearly basis, every deal is approached in the exact same way. We're going to try to land it at 5x of EBITDA, and we're going to have 2x of debt. We're going to have maybe 1x of rollover equity. So for continuity and skin in the game from the seller. And then we're going to raise 2 to 3 turns of equity from investors. And we're going to raise it from the same pool that we meet at these conferences, including today. And it just seems like that there's a recipe and people are following it and people are doing it very cleverly. But I imagine at least that high finance in New York there's a lot of financial engineering going on. And just innovation in different ways and how you build these products, how you approach things. And for us, of course, we're trying to also uncover this with the podcast. It feels by and large, it's an execution game. Who is the best at executing? And do they have a tight narrative and plan around it?
Don't you feel like we as capital providers contribute to that? Because as I think about like our survey, we're basically trying to shave off any abnormalities, any exceptions to the rule. We want, the buy box is ingrained in this world, and to the more down the fairway is the expression in the buy box. Like everybody celebrates and wants, including us. I mean, maybe this is driven by capital providers like us. Yeah. That the normier the better. Yeah. And so that kind of fuels a lack of innovation. It's funny. I was talking to a sponsor today, and we were talking about electricity transmission, and he has a vision for where he's going to get in as an independent sponsor through the acquisition of lower middle market business in kind of a conventional way, but has a much loftier vision for where he can take it and really reconceive how the grid operates in this country and to move it into a more modular way, like they apparently are doing in China. And I said to him, I mean, it was a grand vision. It was an inspiring vision. And my first question was like, this feels more like VC than PE, you know, in PE, he was like, do you see deals in infrastructure? And I said, yeah. And we always, it's in maintenance, and we celebrate that because maintenance is where the recurring revenue is.
Right.
In fact, building new infrastructure would be unattractive to us because that's project-based revenue, and we don't want that.
Right.
So there is something about to your point. It's like we all, I take the point, but I think that we all contribute to it.
Well said.
Yeah.
We like boring annuities.
Well, it's called boring businesses, and we all exactly. Very interesting. Well, so we have 2 more now social events to go to, and I have a third, which is editing this very footage that you are watching. I got to go do that and ship it off to my editor. So lots more to go. It's 8 o'clock. No, that's my East Coast time still. It's 7 o'clock, and we have a few hours to go. So we'll cut it here unless anybody has any last thoughts. No? Good? Okay.
Great to meet everyone.
Yes. Thank you for saying hello. Thanks for listening to the podcast. We've loved getting real feedback from you listeners today. And by the way, please send us guests. We're always looking for good guests. We found some good guests today, but we're always looking for more. That's not something that we generally solicit, but I'm going to start doing that. We've gotten great feedback from the guests here, but don't assume that we're just overflowing with guests.
Yeah,
love your recommendations.
If you want to be a guest yourself, volunteer yourself.
Yeah. Yes, please. Or if you know a good guest, volunteer them, but in both ways. Thank you for watching, and good night from McGuireWoods 2025, Dallas. Thank you. Hope you enjoyed that interview. For more like it, subscribe to Meeting Other Minds wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also watch us on YouTube. And check out Minds Capital, where Nicholas and I are partners alongside Max Lummis. Minds Capital invests equity in independent sponsored deals. So if you're a sponsor with a deal under LOI, please visit mindscapital.co to start a conversation. There's also an investor tab on our website with information about partnership opportunities and future fundraises. See you in the next episode.